Welcome to Flight Path, a brand new podcast from Tern's R&D exec team. Each week, we invite you into the cockpit for insider's look at our latest launches, current projects, and upcoming innovations. We're so excited to have you on this journey, so let's dive in. Well, welcome back, everybody. Happy Friday, or whatever day it is that you're listening to this. We are back with another exciting episode of Flight Path. If this happens to be the first episode that you've listened to, go ahead and click on subscribe. We do these every single Friday, where we spend probably 30 to 40 minutes kind of talking about what's new in the world of Tern, what we've shipped, different kind of just updates. And so it's a really good way to stay up to date. We know most of you are actually watching on YouTube, so we're going to try something a little bit different today and actually do a little screen sharing, and we'll see how that goes. And if it goes well, maybe we'll do more of that so you can look at something besides just the three of us. But with that, Brad, Molly, welcome. How's the week been? Maybe we'll kick off with the week in review. It's been, I know, a pretty fun one. Molly, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, are we talking on-site takeaways?
Talking on, oh, that's right. Yeah, that's a good point. So I'll tee this up.
Okay.
I wasn't looking at the agenda. So this week was kind of fun in that the first 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we had the kind of entire exec team at Tern come together in Detroit. We brought in some of our kind of engineering leads, and we really spent 3 pretty intensive days talking about kind of what the future of Tern looked like. What are the things that we're going to be doing this quarter? What are the things that we're doing in 2025? What does the team look like? It was really fun. So we actually thought, because a lot of the week was taken up by that, we'd kick off with a rapid fire biggest takeaways from the offsite, and then we'll go into the week in review. Thank you, Molly, for the reminder. So, no, Molly, do you want to start off with what you liked or what your biggest takeaway was for the offsite?
I would love to. Thanks. Yeah, so I think my biggest takeaway, there's a ton. It was hard to choose one. Is that I think all of us there had experienced companies that grew really fast and tried to take on a lot of different things at once. And we kind of saw how that caused things to slow down and decision making was harder. So when we really think about building Tern, it's very much about intentional growth. And so going into the onsite, I was a little nervous. There's so many different things that we deeply believe would be impactful. And I was like, how are we going to narrow these down effectively so we're not really putting our focus on too many things, having to grow the team too quickly? How are we going to come to these decisions? It felt like impossible almost going in. And it was, as you said, it was a very intense few days, but I just feel so good about where we landed. And also just like, it was really fun getting there. It was intense, but it was such good discussions and so many good humans in the room too. So I feel really good with where we ended up, and mostly about our ability to maintain kind of pace and focus and continue to deliver, which I think is so core to Tern's brand, that like rapid feeling of innovation and development that advisors see every week. So yeah, feeling exhausted, but really good coming out of it.
Couldn't agree more. Brad, what were your takeaways?
Yeah, I think very similar to Molly. Like I went in kind of like with this like excited nervousness. Like how are we gonna think about all these things? How are we gonna think through all these like kind of strategic decisions we want to make? And the end of the week, the end of the couple of days, I walked away just feeling incredibly like appreciative of our team, and also like incredibly confident that we have the right team to both like grow Tern as a business in like a sustainable way that keeps advisors first and make sure that everything we're doing is like really about improving the lives and the business of our current customers and our advisors, and that we can layer on ways we want to grow in the future in a smart way. And I'm excited to do those things. I'm really looking forward to doing those things. And I think over the last couple of months, as we talked about like just like how we're going to do all this, that's what I worried about the most, is like how do we grow without losing what Tern is today, which is like just I think incredibly customer centric and incredibly like quick at reacting and like delivering on our promises and what advisors need, and walking away feeling like we've got that and we're going to be able to nail some cool new strategic things next year.
Yeah, and I'll kind of build on both of that. I feel it was definitely a special moment. I was like halfway through the day on Monday, just like looking around at the team that was there, but also like logging into Slack and seeing like the team that wasn't there and that was holding down the fort. And it's just like this sense of we just have the best people on the Tern team. Like it's really incredible the quality of people that we get to work with and just like the commitment to building something that's truly transformational. And I think the other thing that really stuck out to me a little bit of this like kind of decision like fear, but that fear is like or like going into the offsite was really based on the fact that we had so many incredible bets that we could make that would be industry changing. And we're not going to reveal all of them because we had to kind of say later to several of them. But we started off on Monday taking these kind of poster boards, putting them out the wall, and each one had something that we think would kind of fundamentally reframe how this industry works for the better based on feedback from advisors and agencies and suppliers. And we basically said, okay, we think we can make probably one of these bets over the next 6 to 12 months. And like that's how we framed up the roadmap, the conversation, the resourcing conversation, the debates around like which bet do we make. But for me, it was also really exciting just to zoom out and think, this year we had to make really hard trade-off decisions. We had to say no to a lot of things that we knew would be really, really impactful. But in the next 5 years, like I think a lot of those things that we had up on the wall actually start to come to fruition, right? And I think that's what's really kind of exciting and energizing. And that's certainly the hardest part about building a startup is you've got all this amazing user feedback. There's all these things that we want to improve about the existing product. There's new verticals, there's new user types. There's like all these kind of different opportunities. And to the point that both of you made, that can actually be a bit of a trap if you start to trace too many of them at a time. And so coming out of that offsite with some focus and being like, we are going to continue to double down on the advisor experience in turn. We're going to continue to double down on building best in class agency tools. And we're going to do some new stuff too, which we won't kind of spoil on this podcast. But there's going to be some big bets that we're making that we think will be pretty exciting. So stay tuned for that. So that was the first 3 days, and we'll probably do, I don't know if it'll be next week or in the next couple of weeks, but I would imagine like we'll do maybe like a little bit of a roadmap preview. It'll be high level. It will definitely change, but like we'll give people a little bit of a sneak peek in the coming weeks. But that wasn't the only thing we did this week. There's some other stuff going on. So Molly, maybe back to you. Like what else happened this week?
Yeah, it was a little whiplash. Like you get back on Wednesday afternoon after talking about these like giant strategic things, and the world doesn't stop. We have things to launch and we have things to plan to get ready to build. So yeah, I was really focused on making sure we're on track to ship the first piece of email collaboration either today or tomorrow, which is a way to kind of view all emails related to a trip, even if you're not the trip owner. And then so there'll be like, testing and documentation, the classics for releasing new things that we talk about a lot on this podcast. And then we're getting a new project together for allowing agencies to import historical data for like sales reporting, so you don't lose kind of that year over year view when you transfer from other systems, which is just really important for agencies. So a lot of thinking that needs to go into that. We know that it can be pretty gnarly to get things from one system to another. And then also, I know, David, you'll talk about this, but hiring is very much a team sport. So just really helping on the panels for all the interviews that we're doing.
It's amazing what you can pack into 2 days, right? I mean, and we're not even through. I mean, it's like noon on Friday. So basically that was a day and a half. But Brad, what does the rest of the week look like for you?
Yeah, just on Molly's last point there around hiring, it's been really energizing talking to folks who want to join Tern, and often it's like people who've heard about Tern via advisors and like people who are current customers, which I haven't experienced as much in past companies. It's more like, oh, I heard about like Tern as a cool tech company from like the tech scene, and less like, oh, your customers are like advocating for you, talking about how great you are. Like, I want to join your team, and that's been really cool. Also, some of them listen to the podcast before they interview us, so it's this really funny that like, oh, I feel like I know you. Like I've been watching your podcast. So it's a fun a fun dynamic there. But in addition to doing a bunch of interviewing this week, there's a few like smaller tweaks we've been working on, just like some like quality of life things, and I think that's a term, quality of life things in the product. So like one small change we're looking at is being able to mark a booking as not commissionable. We know it's really important to get all the reporting right, and that's kind of like muddied up today for folks who just have a lot of like $0 commissions that are kind of creating noise. So should be hopefully a small thing we can get in pretty soon. And then starting to dig into also like adding what I'll describe generally as like supplemental info on the itinerary. We have info blocks today that you can put on a day, but we know both folks want those info blocks to be more powerful, to be able to add things like documents to them and images potentially, and then also to be able to put those in like a pre or post trip section. So starting to just like really dig into those and make sure we're approaching that project the right way. So that's been fun. And then, yeah, Molly mentioned some of the other stuff around like importing data, which seems like it's going to be a little more gnarly than I first thought, but it should be cool to get that out soon.
Brad like is so casual, and it's like the pre and post is like the #1 voted feature. People are gonna people are gonna be very excited.
That it's gonna be epic. Love it. Yeah, I think I'll echo the hiring part. I mean, the offsite was so cool and so energizing, but also like mentally exhausting in like the best way, in like the quality of those conversations. And it's been a lot of prep kind of leading up to it, and then coming right out of that, going heavy into hiring. We're really pretty far along in the support hiring process. We obviously we shared this in the Facebook group, but had to say goodbye to Erin about a week ago, and that was really tough. She kind of needed to transition out for personal reasons, but it meant that like Ellen has been the only one in the queue while we're all gone, and so huge shout out to Ellen for holding that down. And if you're chatting with support, be a little bit patient with Ellen because she's literally managing all the inbound questions as they're coming in, as we try and find that next person who can really build on the high quality support that we are really committed to providing to the industry. So that's been a lot of time really thinking about what the right kind of structure of that team is, how do we continue to grow it, and just a lot of interviewing. But then we've also been doing a lot of conversations on our sales side, or the partnership side, specifically for agencies. I mean, it's been really kind of incredible how much interest there is in the agency product. And we just, with Emily on the team, basically haven't been able to be as responsive and proactive as we would like to be there. And so excited to be growing that so that the 500 plus agencies that have reached out over the past couple months, like we can better kind of demo and walk through the product and like really kind of help people understand whether or not Tern is a good fit as it exists today, and really understand our roadmap over the next 3 to 6 months in the agency world. So really excited about the resourcing there just to continue to better serve you all, the listeners, like people that are listening to this and want to learn more, want to get support, want to make sure that you can get your questions answered. We are deeply committed to providing just as high caliber experience on that side of the business as we are on the product side. So really excited about that. Hiring is super time consuming, but it's fun. And to the point that Brad made, like if you know people that you think would be an exceptional fit for the Tern team, even if it's not for these roles right now, like definitely introduce us. We'd love to chat with them. And then the last kind of fun thing, not really like productive, but my parents are working with their first travel advisor, which is really fun. Like they're doing a 35th anniversary cruise to Costa Rica on Windstar, and got them connected to a travel advisor who kind of specializes in Windstar and in Costa Rica. And it's like really been fun watching them like use the product. But it's also like, talk about high stakes. It's like, if anything is like, going weird, then I'm going to hear about it. But that's been really fun. So it's been a good week. It's been a really good week. But let's move on to project shipping this week. And I think we've got kind of one big one that we're going to talk about. We talked a little bit about it on the podcast last time, but we'll actually share a little bit of a visual, and that's the kind of updates to itineraries. And Brad, maybe do you want to kind of remind people like what this is, what the updates that we're making are, and then we can kind of do a quick visual and share that?
Yeah, for sure. So we've shipped a few updates already. There's more coming soon, maybe even some rolling out today or early next week. But the changes we've made over the last couple weeks, the first one was hiding empty days on an itinerary. Might seem really small, but when you've got a 30-day trip where like there's a chunk of days in there that you as the advisor aren't planning things, before it was just like a lot of empty space where you're kind of just like, it almost de-emphasizes the stuff you are planning because there's all this other noise for empty pieces. So got rid of those. If you're not planning anything and there's no like location that you have set in there, those days just don't show up for travelers. I think they know mentally those days exist. We don't need to like show them empty on the itinerary. And then the next thing we were able to do is to add an alternate layout for the itinerary, which is now the new default, which the intent behind that is to really help emphasize basically, again, the imagery that you add to activities or hotels or whatever it might be. In Tern today, if you don't add an image, before you have this like big gray box kind of that looks like you're missing something on each activity. And in order to again not have all those like distracting gray boxes, we introduced a new layout that is more flexible. So if you don't have an image, just the content, the title or the description you have will fill that full space, and it doesn't look like you have a bunch of empty missing details on the itinerary. And then some more stuff coming out soon. I'm not sure if we're going to get to demo this, but making some adjustments to allow more configuration of how we display pricing on the itinerary. We know maybe at different phases of the planning process, you might want to show or hide kind of the overall pricing details of the trip. And there'll be a new setting for that in the very near future.
Perfect. And just to kind of create, yeah, Molly, anything you want to add? Otherwise, I can go pull up a visual here, or maybe you can add if there is.
Brad covered it.
So got just a couple examples here. I thought we're going to try this screen sharing on the podcast thing. We'll kind of narrate this. It's a lot of what Brad talked about. But this is in the app today. I've got kind of a trip. And so you'll notice this new drop down on the overview page of the trip. And it's this itinerary style. You can see right now it's set to side by side. This was the original default, as Brad mentioned, where it's going to have the same styling that it always has. The new default is this vertical list. But before we show that, let me just kind of help everybody understand when we talk about these gray boxes, what we mean. So I'll click on preview here on the itinerary. And you can see that right away, we've got this flight. And because this flight doesn't have an image that has been manually set, we default to this big gray box with a little airplane icon. And we do the same thing for this transfer that we have. If you have photos, those will show up. But again, we've got this kind of activity that doesn't have any images. And so we've got a lot of these gray boxes. If we then go back to that trip overview tab and we go to that itinerary style dropdown and we change that to our vertical list, and this will be the new default kind of moving forward, right, for any new trips. Is that right, Molly?
Yep.
So you'll need to change this on old trips if you want the new style, but any new trips that you create moving forward will have this kind of new view. And so I'll update that. And again, I'll just preview it. And now you can see the gray placeholders have gone away. So we have the flights that are much cleaner. It's got this kind of vertical view. So instead of having this mix of like top to bottom, left to right combos, it's just like scrolling down and you can see that we're collapsing that, still elevating your imagery in this really beautiful way, but really cleaning this up, making it look, I think, a lot more professional. So really excited about that. I'll also just kind of quickly toggle over to a different trip, cleverly named Lots of Empty Days. Now, I've hacked this a little bit just to show you the contrast between the two because I added these locations to these empty days. But basically, if we click on preview here, you can see I have a flight that comes in on June 5th, and then I've got a bunch of empty days through the 8th. And so we can click in on that. And again, we've got the flight, and then we have this nothing planned. And this is what it would show up as for every single one of those days. Now, it will actually only show up that way if you defined a location. And so if you still want to highlight these empty days, all you have to do is add a location, as I did here to kind of demo what it looked like before. But what we'll see is that if we clear out this location from these days, just by deleting the location, and then we go ahead and we click on preview, it will now collapse those days. And so it's a lot cleaner. That helps your clients really focus on what the content is. And so again, you've got that flexibility. If you want to show the empty days, just put a location in there. And a pro tip that I don't know how many people know about, but if you are putting in Singapore, for example, Singapore, and you want to copy that to this day, once that location loads, you get this little arrow. You can just click that arrow and really quickly fill in the same location day on day. So a little pro tip there in case people didn't know about it. And again, just by adding those locations, now those days will pop up. So you've got configuration, you've got optionality, but really helping your clients focus on what matters. So
and maybe Just one other thing, while we're here, we also see people do things like day of leisure or day at sea. Again, like it doesn't have to be a location. Just if they want those days there and they want to name them something else, you can totally do that.
Yeah, and just to make sure everyone kind of knows what I was talking about here, just adding in, like, this doesn't have to be a location, like an actual location. We do have the Google search, and we're trying to like map it if it is. But if you wanted to put in whatever you want, you can see it then titles the day that way. So good call out there. All right. So that is some of the new design updates. And now I need to find the agenda again. I've got all those tabs pulled up. But anything else that we want to share about itinerary updates? We didn't show in the demo the hiding of the pricing because, like we said, it's not quite out yet. But stay tuned, coming very soon. But anything else we want to talk about before we move into the week ahead?
I think we briefly touched on this. We do have email collaboration, which will part of it will either ship today or Monday. And just so people are aware, and I think we have some language here, even in the first version. As you know, at Tern, we like to ship things as soon as they will add value, right? And so we're getting out the kind of read-only version of email first, so that if you're a VA or the owner of an agency and a trip is shared with you, for example, you're not missing important communication that is coming through on that trip, even if you're not the trip owner. The second part, which I think should probably launch next week, it's fairly kind of well contained, is actually being able to send new emails yourself. So if, again, you're that VA or the agency owner, you notice important communication, you could send off a new email. Wow, Brad. That
was what's going on, Brad?
I'm in my
terrifying.
parents' basement, and they for sure just turned off the lights, forgetting that this is a thing. Do we cut something from the podcast? I don't know.
No, we're keeping this in. This is fantastic.
That's gold.
Oh no.
And I was basically done anyways. People who just send new emails will come out next week. So never fear if you are like missing that when we launch the first part. That will be coming soon after.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I love how we made it this far in the podcast. You were talking about like Brad's background being different. We're trying not to draw attention to it because it's like, and then this happens, and it's just like, well, this is hilarious. It's back. Got light again.
The power of texting your parents from the basement.
I was like, turn the lights back on, please.
Mom, I'm podcasting.
What were we talking about?
Email collaboration.
We'll talk about the week ahead.
Yeah, we'll talk about the week. I do think, closing out the email collaboration again, I think this is something that's going to be so powerful. And for people that are able to kind of really take advantage of this, where you have, whether there's an assistant or somebody that you're working with on trips, just like being able to see the full communication chain, being able to like kick off a new email to those clients and have that context shared within the system, I think is going to be another leap forward in enabling this kind of team sport that is planning travel. So really excited for that. I think just seeing the context and that read only is already a huge leap forward, but then being able to kind of initiate those new conversations and kind of send communications to the client with everything being tracked and visible is going to be huge. So let's talk about the week ahead, because I think that maybe is a good transition into what next week is going to look like. Molly, you want to kick things off?
Yeah, so some repeat information here, focus on making sure all those pieces of email collaboration are launched smoothly, and then planning and making sure we're ready to go to start building out the importing of historical data for agencies. And then the other thing is, we got some good clarity, as we mentioned, on bigger, longer term initiatives during the onsite, which we'll preview more in future podcasts. But there's some serious thinking to do to get into the details of what that will look like. And we need to plan ahead on a lot of these things. So I'm excited to get into detail mode, but for things that are much further out, to make sure that we're making the progress that we need to there.
Love it. Brad?
Yeah, I think really just repeating the things. It was like, what are we working on the last couple of days? More of that this week. So like really digging into the details of importing historical like sales data, commission details, and then probably spending some more time on this like additional information on the itinerary, solving that set of problems as well. And then, of course, groups, because always groups. But we haven't talked about that at all but like we spend a good chunk of our on-site talking about groups and how do we, again, get value out as quickly as possible. So really like kind of have to go back to the drawing board in some things and think about like, okay, if we're trying to ship as quick as we can, what does that look like? Make sure that we have those things nailed down. So have to kind of like jump back into the group space and really start getting ready to build that within the next week or two.
Yeah, it's coming up. It's coming up fast. It's exciting.
Awesome. My week ahead is a lot of follow-ups from the offsite. One of the other kind of big projects though is like bring on more people on our partnerships team as we think about like our website, just kind of our marketing and like storytelling around Tern, I think is really pretty out of date. And so a lot of what I'm going to be focused on next week is kind of like a big sprint on how do we get our website in a better place. If you look at like our agency page right now, for example, it's like join our agency webinar on May 19th. And it's like, okay, like we probably have more to share than that. And so really thinking through updating that, having it better represent our brand, and then building kind of a lot of the operations backend that's going to be needed for us to bring on 2 more people on the partnerships team and to think about all the things and training and onboarding. Same on the support side. So a lot of kind of ops stuff, which I'm actually very excited about. It's kind of like a little bit of my happy place after a lot of strategy and stuff like that. Now it's like, cool, let's go make it happen, right? Like, let's actually start to create it. So it should be a lot of fun. And I think that's it for the podcast this week. We've had some excitement. We tried screen sharing for the first time. Brad lost power for a minute because his parents turned the lights off in the basement, and it's been a good week. So until next time, we will send off. Reminder: subscribe, click like, comment on what your favorite part of the podcast was, and we'll see you all next week. Bye.
Thanks.